Welcome to Extra O Marriage. I'm Robin,
And I'm Daryl.
and we're going to talk about how to have an extraordinary relationship. Because we believe every relationship can be extraordinary.
So even relationships where there's been adultery and infidelity,
Yes.
relationships that would maybe classify as roommates.
Sure.
Is there any relationship that you don't think can be extraordinary? And when we talk about extraordinary, we're not talking about a marriage that just survives, but we're talking about marriages that thrive.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any situation where you think there's no hope?
I think every situation has hope.
So what do you think it takes to have an extraordinary marriage?
The main thing is intention.
And what do you mean when you say that?
Being intentional. Doing things on purpose. Doing things with purpose.
Okay, so what we're going to talk about, we've been talking about taking massive action. We've been talking about making decisions, putting the past behind us and focusing forward. We had an entire week where we talked about putting self first, which seems counterintuitive until you go watch the video. It makes sense. To have an extraordinary relationship, you have to put yourself first and look in the mirror and ask yourself how you're doing. But this week we've been talking about taking massive action, and we didn't title it just taking massive action. We titled it taking intentional massive action. So let's talk a little bit about what it means to be intentional. The definition is on purpose, doing things on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And a quote that we were talking about earlier says that intention is the mother of action. Right?
Nope.
Nope.
Intention is the mother of all change.
Of all change. Intention is the mother of all change. And action is really, and I think the reason I went with that was that action is really where change happens. It's when we have that intention. So I was kind of thinking of that whole mother thing, and that intention is not just the mother of change, but it gives birth, and that's what mothers do. They give birth to something, and intention gives birth to change
and to action.
So talk a little bit about intention from your perspective. How do we be intentional?
First we have to think about it. So sometimes instead of just, to me, being intentional is kind of the opposite of just going through the motions.
Okay.
So it's taking more thought, consideration, and some kind of a plan of action, because without the action step, your intentions, what's that old saying about the road to hell is paved with good intentions?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think the intent of that is saying that you can have all kinds of good intentions, but until you are putting action to those steps, your outcome is not going to be good.
Okay. So then there's the whole idea of setting your intention.
Mm-hmm.
You have to set your intention before you can take action.
Right.
The action is an outcome of our intentions.
Mm-hmm.
I want to have a good relationship. I want to have a healthy body. I want to have a nice bank account. There's a lot of things I
mm-hmm.
want that and then you set your intent that, okay, I'm going to go do something today to have a healthy body. I'm going to do something to have a healthy relationship. I'm setting my intention. I have good intention. I want that. But if that's all I have is an intent, I intend to go to the gym, or I intend to...
As long as it's out there something I'm going to do, you're not doing it.
Right.
It's not until we're actually doing it that it really counts, and we'll really get the result that we're after.
Okay, so we've talked about our extra O factor being intentional, on purpose, living on purpose. And I think it's the idea that once I decide what I want, it starts with a want. We want an extraordinary relationship, and we are making some incredible steps towards an extraordinary relationship because we've been intentional. But that's something we want. We want a healthy lifestyle, and it starts with a want.
Right.
But we have to move past that want to an action. I want a healthy lifestyle, so I intend to go to the gym. I intend to do things in my relationship. I intend to take action.
You really have to have a plan.
Yeah.
As far as like being healthy, that's one of my intents, is to be healthier than I have been before. So for me, that means more movement, more exercise, eating right, not eating certain things like sugar and things like that. But again, I can intend to do all those things. If I don't do them, then day after day, week after week, month after month, I don't see any results.
Right.
Because I'm not putting the plan into action. So that's, again, like I said at the beginning, part of the thought process, I think, is going that next step beyond thinking about something is to come up with a plan, write some things down, have some goals, being intentional about the outcome that I want. I have to have a plan to get from where I'm at right now to where I'd like to be. And so that's the intentional part to me.
So there's the whole idea of setting intent, where I think so many people, and I think we're all guilty of it to some degree, so many people, we get up and we go through life.
Yeah.
We get up, we have our
routine.
It's a routine,
yeah.
and it's just and there's not a lot of thought that goes into
Yeah.
it. And it's just we get up, we go about our day, we go to work, we come home, we do our thing, we take the kid to soccer, we do these things, and there's not a lot of planning. There's not a lot of thought that goes into doing things on purpose.
Yeah.
And so when we set intent, it's taking one more step towards thinking strategically.
Right.
Starts with what I want. If I want that, then I'm going to set my intent of how I'm going to get that. So if I want this kind of a body, if I want this kind of a health in my lifestyle, I've got to say, okay, I'm going to go to the gym 3 days a week. That's what I'm going to do. I'm setting my intention. I've established what I want, and I established that I'm going to set a path to get there. Once I set my intent, then I have to act upon that.
Right.
And so there's an action that comes out of that intention. So if I say, I want an extraordinary relationship, that's what I want. So I'm going to set my intent to do certain things to get that, which means I might need to study communication skills. I'm setting my intention. I'm going to study communication skills. I'm going to learn. I'm going to take in. If I want an extraordinary relationship, what am I doing to learn how to have an extraordinary relationship? If we put it in the same context as the body, and I'm going to have a healthy lifestyle, we don't just go, I'm going to go to the gym. So I go to the gym and I stand around and I don't do anything.
Right.
I still don't have a healthy body. I had to study what is it that I want in a healthy body? What kind of diet? What kind of exercise do I want? Just a lean, mean, muscular body, or do I want, these ripping muscle, because it takes different action to get those two different kinds of outcomes.
Right.
So if I then say I want a extraordinary relationship, I have to probably study a little bit about what that looks like. And then I have to go, okay, what am I going to do today to move me closer in my communication skills. Communication seems to be one of the things we hear a lot about. That is one of the big struggles in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody wanted better communication, the first thing that comes to my mind is listening. The listening skills is an art.
It's a learnable skill.
Right.
I think a lot of times we think that, I'm not a good listener, so that's just how it's going to be. That's not how it has to be.
Right.
And that's true with many things. We decide if we're going to be a good listener or not. There's so many things that we can learn. They're learnable skills. It's not a character trait. It's not something you're born with or not. It's a learnable skill.
Right. So if we just start there, we're trying to help folks be intentional about some things. I think listening is one of the places where it's such a challenging thing in our society today, especially with cell phones and the screen time distractions, and so listening becomes a challenge. How could people be more intentional? What are some things they could do to be on purpose that would help move them closer to an extraordinary relationship? I can tell you, if you can master your listening skills, your art of listening, if you can master that, it will move you to a incredible change in your relationship. So what are some things people could do to be intentional in listening?
I think, like you mentioned, active listening. I think if you're going about it that way, that you are actively listening. Again, it's part of that intentionality. So it has to do with your body language. It has to do with where your attention is going. Who are you giving your attention to? Who or what are you giving your attention to? So if you're talking to me, I'll just give you a quick example from earlier today.
Okay.
I asked you a question.
Right.
You started answering my question, but I was still working on my computer.
Right.
And I thought I was kind of listening, but then when you were done and you asked me a question,
Right.
I had no idea what you had said, and I realized that, and so I apologized.
Yeah.
And I turned away from my computer. I apologized for not listening and asked you to repeat it. I turned my body toward you, away from the distractions, and intentionally and intently listened to what you were saying.
I think that's huge, because even in this conversation we're talking about being intentional if you want this huge outcome over here. But setting your intent and being intentional and doing things on purpose is not necessarily this huge thing.
Yeah.
So with listening, what you did, and by the way, what you did was so profound because you apologized. You could have just turned and said, I didn't catch what you were saying. But you acknowledged, which meant a lot to me, that you acknowledged that, I'm sorry, I wasn't even listening. And then you turned your entire body away from the distraction. And I knew I had your attention. That was a small thing, but it was a big thing.
Yeah.
You were intentional. At that point, you were intentional to give me your attention. And I think that's what we're talking about. All the way from how I listen to being intentional about something I might do today, to it might be, for no reason, go buy a card, write a note. I've got sticky notes that Kelly puts in my lunch. I've got a sticky note that you left. In fact, it's a pink note. I'm going to get this note because this sticky note, I think, describes intention well. you had to think about this, and you said, "My love, I'm so proud of you, and I respect you for how hard you work and the sacrifice you make for us. Love, Rob." That little note that I've kept, you had to think about that. That note didn't just fall into my computer bag that day. You had to intentionally think, I'm going to write a note. You wrote the note. This note probably took you how long to write?
A few seconds.
A few seconds. But the impact that note has is huge. It was in something you did on purpose. I think that's the power of this. Is we just go through the motions so much that we're not stopping to think, what one little thing could I do today that would make a huge difference in my relationship?
I think being thoughtful and considerate is two really important things in every relationship, but especially in our close relationships or intimate relationships. It's really the opposite of just going through the motions.
But you have to think about it.
Yeah.
And I think that when you say being thoughtful, I think going back to our video on putting self first. We all want our spouse or those in our life to listen to us a certain way. We would love for our spouse to turn and put their phone away and lean in and listen. How are we doing at doing what we want our spouse to do?
Right.
If listening is a struggle for you, are we putting ourselves into our spouse's shoes, recognizing, number one, it is a struggle for everybody. But am I doing what I want them to do? Am I doing what I want them to do with intentional actions and in speaking my love language and doing and saying things that would register love to me? I think that's one of the things that's so cool about our journey in this is that we're human just like everybody we talk to. And listening, even though we teach this and even though it's a part of our everyday intent, you and I still struggle.
Yeah.
So the ability to be the ability to humble ourselves and be honest with our spouse and say, I'm sorry, I wasn't listening.
Yeah.
And being able to receive that on both sides, I think, is powerful.
Yeah.
Powerful. So, taking intentional, massive action. Intentional. Being intentional. We want to encourage you this week to be intentional, to do some things this week on purpose. Start thinking about, what do you do in your relationship on purpose? Start thinking about some things that you can do on purpose. And I'll just tell you, if communication is a struggle for you, which it is for most, we want to encourage you to go to our blog, extraomarriage.com. That's XTRAO marriage.com. And pull up our blog on active listening. There's some great tips in there, some strategies that'll help you. I can guarantee you this. When you learn to master the art of listening, it will radically change your relationship. Pick some things to do this week, whether it be in your health, whether it be in your relationship. Obviously, this is all about relationship, but this whole idea of the power of intention is not just about relationships. It's about lifestyle.
About life. Living with intention.
Yeah, every day in every aspect of your life. Live on purpose. I think one of the greatest lives we can live is the life we live on purpose.
Right.
And when we live on purpose, we find joy, we find fulfillment, we find growth. all those are a
It
part
sets
of
us apart from ordinary.
that. Right.
Which is what we want.
Right.
We want extraordinary.
Right. We want to have an extraordinary marriage. We want to have extraordinary relationships with our friends and our families. We want to live an extraordinary life. I don't want to get to the end and have regrets. I don't want to get to the end and wish I woulda. So the more intentional you are every day about how you're going to live makes a difference. So we're glad you're here. Thank you once again for watching. Thanks again for liking, sharing, and commenting on our videos and our material. We know this, that you know somebody whose relationship could use some help. So maybe this doesn't register real deep with you. We want to encourage you to share it though, because there's somebody out there who could use some encouragement to live intentionally. Glad you're here. Go make it an extra kind of day.
Thank you for joining us today.
Check out our website with resources to help grow your relationship at extramarriage.com.
That's xtraomarriage.com. Like our Facebook page and share our content with your friends on social media.
Make a decide and set your intention for an extraordinary marriage. Start today.